Welcome, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to worship with the community of First Unitarian Church of Omaha. Whether you're a visitor or a longtime member, we are glad to have you with us. Our community is a rainbow of gender and sexual identities. It's a community of diverse cultural and class backgrounds. We draw from many sources of inspiration and share common liberal religious values. And my name's Mary Kay. I'm your worship associate this morning. Whatever is on your heart, however it is with your soul in this moment, whether tears have fallen from your eyes this past week or gleeful laughter has spilled out from your smiling mouth, whether you're feeling brave or brokenhearted, defiant or defeated, fearsome or fearful, you are beloved and you are welcome here. Each week we acknowledge that where we meet for worship as the First Unitarian Church of Omaha is the land of the Omaha Oto Nations, and that Indigenous people in the greater community have become marginalized and made invisible. May we recognize their presence among us and work with them to resolve the issues of poverty, displaced children, and murdered and missing Indigenous women, MMIW. And we're gonna have our chalice lighting. And we have special guests this morning to light our chalice. We have Reverend Oscar's daughter, Ailish, who is going to light the chalice for us. Spark of the Spirit, cupped in earth's embrace, light of love, alive in all creation. As we kindle this flame, we rekindle our connection to the sacred web of life. Thank you, Ailish. And now we have opening music, I Am What I Am.
I am my own special creation. So come take a look, give me the hook for the ovation. It's my world that I want to have a little pride in. My world, and it's not a place I have to hide in. Life's not worth a damn till you can say, hey world, I am what I am. I am what I am. I don't want praise, I don't want pity. I bang my own drum, some think it's noise, I think it's pretty. And so what if I love each feather and each spangle? Why not try to see things from a different angle? Your life is a sham till you can shout out loud, I am what I am. I am am what I am, and what I am needs no excuses. I deal my own deck, sometimes the ace, sometimes the deuces. There's one life and there's no return and no deposit. One life, so it's time to open up your closet. Life's not worth a damn till you can say, hey world, I am what I am.
Wow, thank you, Jonathan. That was Jonathan Fraser, soloist, and Judy. And that was our special tip of our hat to Pride Week and the parade yesterday. Now I have a couple of readings that we're going to start with. The first one is from Gary Dorian, The Making of American Liberal Theology, 1900 to 1950. The progressive era liberals believed that God was immanent in the evolutionary processes of nature and modern cultural development. They accepted the Enlightenment dictum that no credible truth claim can be settled or based upon an appeal to external authority. Most of them embrace an idealistic theology of social salvation that was novel in Christian history. The founders of American liberal theology sought to create a third way between the authority-based Christian orthodoxies of their time and a rising tide of rationalistic deism and atheism. They created this third way by reconceptualizing the meaning of traditional Christian teaching in the light of modern knowledge and modern ethical values. In the 20th century, American liberal theology produced a naturalistic, empirical tradition that spurned all forms of nature-spirit dualism. In both cases, liberal theology was reformist in spirit and substance, not revolutionary. Liberal theology is defined by its openness to the verdicts of modern intellectual inquiry, especially historical criticism and the natural sciences. Its commitment to the authority of individual reasons and experience, its conception of Christianity as an ethical way of life, its favoring of moral concepts of atonement, and its commitment to make Christianity credible and socially relevant to contemporary people. And our second reading is by the UUA Commission on Institutional Change, Widening the Circle of Concern, a reinterpretation of our theological legacies. Reinterpretation of our theological legacies in these times should be liberatory and articulate our commitment to affirming and welcoming those who have been marginalized in our larger society and within our communities and organizations. Our analysis suggests we need to articulate a theology of liberation, experimentation, and innovation grounded in our Unitarian Universalist principles and sources of inspiration, developing a shared theology that centers on helping to unearth, manifest, and point the way towards liberation, along with experimentation that strives for our collective flourishing. This theology will also call us to be accountable to the legacies of our past deeds and to work for an equitable future. This will lay the groundwork for our work around truth, transformation, and reparations. And now, every week, we take up an offering in support of our liberal religious values. One half of the loose currency in the offering plate is donated to a different cause each month, one with a local presence which advances UU principles. Our Share the Plate recipient for July is NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness. NAMI is a grassroots organization dedicated to education, support, and advocacy with anyone whose life has been touched by mental illness. Learn more about NAMI at www.nami.org, home. And we have a song for offertory, Will I?
Our offertory song is called Will I from Rent. Those of you not familiar with the musical, written by Jonathan Larson back in early 80s. It's a song about a group of people in an AIDS support group coming together.
Will I lose my dignity? Will someone care? Will I wake tomorrow from this nightmare?
Will I lose my dignity? Will someone care? Will I wake tomorrow from this nightmare?
I lose my dignity. Will someone care? Will I wake tomorrow from this nightmare?
Will I lose my dignity?
Will I lose my dignity? Will someone care? Will I wake tomorrow from this nightmare? Will I lose my dignity? Will someone care? Will I wake tomorrow from this nightmare? Will someone care? Will I wake tomorrow from this nightmare?
Thank you. That was lovely. Now we come to a time in our service for sharing together. We share our joys with others so that those joys may be multiplied, and we share our concerns so that our community can offer its care. And we have one that was submitted this week from Greg, who asked for a silent prayer for his sister Michelle, who has COVID. And Nellie Chenoweth has a joy. She's just thrilled to see the representation of younger people at the Pride Parade. And younger people specifically who aren't afraid to celebrate who they are. And then we have another one, another joy. So glad the Afghan family has cars. That was in the email blast this week. Thanks to all those, especially who helped get them cars. And also very glad for all the folks who marched in the Pride Parade yesterday. And we have one from Reverend Oscar, who wants to add the family of Sue Powell as a concern, sorrow. And somebody in the family passed away on Saturday after a long illness, surrounded by family at home. Blessed be. Okay, and next, if everybody wants to get comfortable, and we have a meditation on loving kindness. It's actually based on hymn 1031. Oh, before we go into this, there's no joys or concerns submitted online. I just wanted to make sure. Okay. So you guys are welcome to softly sing the hymn. We're going to be doing some talking interspersed between the verses. And just sit back and relax. Loving kindness, or metta, is unconditional, inclusive love. A love with wisdom. It has no conditions. It does not depend on whether someone deserves it or not. There's no expectations of anything in return. I'd like you to bring your focus to your solar plexus, your chest area or heart center. Breathing in and out from this area as if you're breathing from the heart. And let us sing.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole.
You might place a hand on your heart as you offer this loving kindness, first to yourself, into your own life, your own body, this place where we must start. What prayers, what wishes, what kind of love do you need right now? Maybe it's a prayer for internal peace or groundedness. Maybe it's for wellness and health in your body. I invite you to share this prayer or wish for yourself softly here or in the chat box if you're watching online. And let us sing.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole.
Now extending this loving kindness to someone outside of yourself to a loved one or friend, someone within our First U community on either side of the Missouri River, all the way to Lincoln today. Someone that you know is at high risk, or perhaps to a stranger who you imagine is especially struggling in this moment. I invite you to share their names softly here or in the chat box, adding a prayer or a wish if you choose. And let us sing.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole.
And finally, extending this loving kindness to all life, to the great we, to the entire web of life, of which we are a part, human and more than human. I invite you to share your prayers or wishes for the collective, for the whole, for all of us and all life, softly here or in the chat box. Amen, and may it be so. And now, our guest speaker, Reverend Oscar Sinclair, who's come here from University Church of Lincoln, is going to do our sermon, What We Owe Each Other, and we welcome him.
Thank you. So it's been kind of a weird week. Oh boy. It's been kind of a weird week in my life. Sue Powell, who I was in the joys and sorrows, was my grandmother. So she passed away yesterday. I'm headed from here to East Lansing, Michigan to be with the family. So I can't quite bring myself to get in the high pulpit, so if you don't mind, I'm just going to be here and talk for a little bit. Not about that, though. About what we owe each other as Unitarian Universalists. And so I want to start the sermon this morning by talking about General Assembly that happened in Portland about a month ago. Every year, the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations gathers in June to discuss the business of the association. I usually say the General Assembly does three things. One, it allows us to do the business of the association. Two, it allows us to have lots of meetings of small identity groups within Unitarian Universalism. And three, it allows us to actually see each other and be with each other. Not as single churches, but as a movement that stretches across the whole country. And for the last several years, General Assembly has been fully online. Since the first one in June of 2020 was supposed to be in Providence, Rhode Island, and was canceled, and then I think last year we were supposed to be in Milwaukee, and we were fully online. And this year we were trying this new thing where we would be multi-platform. So we had about 1,500 people online and about the same number in person in Portland. And for those of us in Portland, it was the first time that we had seen each other in 3 years. There was so much to talk about. so much to process, so much that we had each been through, so many hugs and tears and wonderings to share. And at the opening worship, with about 3,000 people either in person or online, Reverend Bill Sinclair got up to preach. Bill has twice been the president of the Unitarian Universalist Association. He is the longtime member of First Unitarian in Portland, and he is about to become the preacher in residence at All Souls, D.C. So he is a big name in Unitarian Universalism. Generally someone you listen to when they give a major speech. And so Reverend Singford gets up to preach, to open up GA, and he talks about the future of Unitarian Universalism. And as part of that, he makes this very clear distinction between liberal theology and liberation theology. The two pieces that we heard about in the readings this morning. So fast forward a month to a couple days ago, and I'm sitting at the Unitarian Church of Lincoln and debriefing this experience of General Assembly with all our members who were there either in person or online. And the question that keeps coming up multiple times is, what was that all about? What was this digression about theology that sounds like it's describing the same thing, and why was that the thing that we talked about after 3 years apart? Why is that the important thing? So to answer that question, you need some time. It's a question that begins in academic theology, but ends up with where we are going together as a faith. It's fundamentally a question about who we are as Unitarian Universalists. Not who we are as First Unitarian Church in Omaha or Unitarian Church in Lincoln or Portland or Kansas City, but who we are as the Unitarian Universalist Association. So first, the academic theology part. And if this is not a thing that interests you, feel free to look down. I think there are hymnals here. Yeah, if you want to just flip through the back of the hymnal while we go through academic theology, it'll take about 6 minutes, and then we'll get back to the actual meaningful part. But academic theology. We'll start with liberal theology, this piece that Gary Dorian described in the reading this morning. Liberal theology is the historical root of Unitarianism and Universalism. It's a school of theology that began in the early 19th century, mostly in the Northeast. And when I'm around other ministers, not necessarily Unitarian Universalist ministers, I say that we were founded as a liberal Christian denomination. And when I say that, I'm not actually talking about our politics. Right? This is the first important distinction to make. Many of us have been and probably are politically liberal, but that is actually a different thing than what you say in your welcoming every week here, where you say that this is a place with common liberal religious values. That's talking about this school of theology. Liberal theology is the project that Gary Dorian described in the first of this morning's readings. It's bigger than Unitarianism or Universalism. We were a small part of it. The school of thought arises out of the Enlightenment and is defined by its openness to the verdicts of modern intellectual inquiry. A digression among the digressions. Notice modern, not postmodern there. That's an important distinction in it. But I think of liberal theology in our context as having three pillars. First, the use of reason and experience as the beginning point of Unitarian theology. No appeals to external authority because God says so is not actually an answer in Unitarian theology or liberal theology. The second big pillar is freedom from constraint. So liberal theology places individual freedom, for better or worse, on a high level. When Voltaire is said to have said in the Enlightenment, I don't agree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. That's a cornerstone of this school of theology. And the third big pillar is progress. Liberal theologians were by and large optimists. They believed that things were gradually getting better over time. The world has gotten better and will continue to do so. Now, each of these 3 points is a little bit complicated, right? Because reason and experience can become its own kind of dogma, or it can become a jumping off point for curiosity and awe about the world. Freedom from constraint allows for a wide range of views. It also is the cornerstone for the ACLU defending Nazis marching in Skokie, Illinois. And progress is probably the one that most often trips us up. In my home congregation in Baltimore, the sanctuary looks a lot like this, actually. And there are 2 plaques, one right there, that's a quote from Deuteronomy, it's a 200-year-old church, and one over there, right where the hymn number is, that is the old encapsulation of liberal theology by James Freeman Clarke, which goes, see if I can get it right, the fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of man, the leadership of Jesus, and the progress of mankind onward and upward forever. We don't say that a whole lot in Unitarian churches anymore. Certainly not in that way. We have come a little bit in our use of pronouns. But really, this idea of progress onward and upward forever is just a different way of phrasing one of the most reused pieces of 19th century Unitarianism. You heard this quote: "I do not pretend to understand the moral universe. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience. And from what I see, I am sure that it bends towards justice." It's Theodore Parker, and then later Martin Luther King, and later Barack Obama. But this idea that the moral arc of the universe is long and it bends towards justice is the liberal project of progress as a religious ideal. And that idea of progress as an inevitable thing that was going to happen, that the moral arc of the universe is bending towards justice, was actually liberal theology's downfall. In the beginning of the 20th century, it went from being probably the preeminent school of theology that most seminaries taught to, in the aftermath of the Second World War, a historical curiosity, and still the grounding of Unitarian Universalism. Because, as it turns out, it is difficult to talk about progress in the shadow of the Holocaust. So that's liberal theology. Liberation theology. If liberal theology is the historical taproot of Unitarian Universalism, the thing that we ground ourselves in for 200 years, liberation theology is a more recent development, but no less important to our shared story as a faith. The roots of liberation theology go way, way back, but in its modern version, it's tied closely to the progressive Catholic social teachings of the 1960s and 70s, mostly in Central and South America. Theologians like Oscar Romero, Leonardo Boff, and Gustavo Gutierrez spoke directly to the social context of their moment: rampant inequality and ecological devastation. And liberation theology is distinct from liberal theology in that it does not distance itself from God. It doesn't have that sense of remove, that we will never appeal to an external authority. Rather, liberation theology takes God and places the divine right into history, with what Gutierrez calls God's preferential option for the poor. God, in this conception, is constantly showing up, but not in a neutral way. God is on the side of the poor, of the oppressed, of the hungry. And because of that, it is our duty, our obligation to act in solidarity. So Paul Razor, a Unitarian theologian, said that liberation theology speaks to the underside of history and offers perspectives on issues such as poverty and oppression that we might otherwise miss. This is especially important as we respond to social problems. To be in solidarity with those who are oppressed requires empathy and imagination. So we don't necessarily hear about the preferential option for the poor from Unitarian Universalist pulpits that much. That's not really our language. But when folks like Sophia Betancourt talk about how we have an obligation to dismantle systems of oppression, she's drawing on a liberation theology. The Commission on Institutional Change, which was the second reading that Mary read this morning, is drawing that connection even more explicitly, saying if there is to be a 21st century Unitarian Universalist theology, it must draw on this liberation tradition. Okay, academic theology is over. What does that mean for us? So the first question for folks in this room is, what do Unitarian Universalists believe? Oh, I'm guest preaching. That's not a rhetorical question. What's the first thing that comes to your mind if you just shout it out?
Many different things.
Many different things. Okay. Love. Freedom. Democracy.
The environment and our connectedness with us.
The environment and our connectedness to it.
Hopefully, rational thought.
Rational thought. Openness.
Search for truth and justice and meaning in life.
Search for truth and justice and meaning in life. So, great. Where do we write all that stuff down?
What?
Where do we write that down?
In our 7 principles.
In our 7 principles. Exactly. So we actually didn't plan this, but as we were lighting the chalice, my daughter came up and handed me an envelope where she had written a note to me, but she had scribbled on the 7 principles. Because this is the piece of paper she could find downstairs in this church. The 7 principles were published in this form in about 1985. They cover just about everything that we just spoke about, from inherent worth and dignity, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, teachings of earth-centered traditions which celebrate the sacred circle of life and instruct us to live in harmony with nature. 7 principles and 6 sources. But the thing is, the 7 principles are not actually a description of what Unitarian Universalists believe. The first line is that we, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote. It is the things that we say as multiple congregations. These are the things that we hold in common. This is what ties Lincoln with Omaha, with Kansas City, with Portland. And in good liberal tradition, progress, remember, the bylaws of the Unitarian Universalist Association require us to reconsider the language of the 7 principles every 15 years, to rewrite them twice a generation. And the last time this happened was in 2008. Does anybody remember that? No, it's not that well remembered because it failed. Back in 2008, there was a full rewrite. It went to General Assembly. They voted on it. It had a majority, but it did not have a supermajority. So it's been about 35 years since this language was rewritten. So it seems like it's been with us forever, but it is actually intended to be revisited over and over and over again to say, who are we now? Who are we now? Who are we becoming? So about a year and a half ago, the Unitarian Universalist Association named a Article 2 study commission, it's called. And their charge was to look at the 7 principles and 6 sources, which are in Article 2 of the UUA bylaws, hence the name, and to rewrite them for who we are becoming in 2022. And the initial push for this came out of the Mid-Atlantic, where I come from. About 6 years ago, Paula Cole Jones proposed an 8th principle to add to the 7. Would covenant to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. About 200 congregations have individually added that principle to their current bylaws. And can you see the liberation theology in that? By our actions, we will accountably dismantle systems of oppression in the world and in ourselves. That we have a responsibility to do that work. Move back from. So the 8th principle calls us not just to individual searches for truth and meaning. It's not enough to demolish barriers to individual freedom. But our work is about dismantling systems of oppression and hatred. So the theology of all this is fascinating to Sherry and I. Right, I could go on and on about how Reinhold Niebuhr pivoted us away from liberal theology, where he wrote this whole book saying you can have lots of people who individually mean well and collectively do terrible things. Moral man and immoral society. It was written in the late 30s. It was a theological exploration of the rise of fascism. But that is probably mostly interesting to Sherry and I. The piece that's not just academic theology is that this debate matters for the future of our faith, because it is the thing in the front of all our churches, the thing that we say we hold in common. In the next 2 years, we're going to have a conversation around the association about what we want Article 2 to be. And that conversation is really about who we want to be as people of faith, what Unitarian Universalism will be. So one brief soapbox moment here. I am a liberal theologian, right? That school of thought is the one that drew me to Unitarian Universalism. It is on the wall of my home church. It's the key that I play in most often when I write sermons or teach classes. I can talk about liberation theology, I can talk about Orthodox theology, but those are as an observer, as somebody who's learned that language late in life. The place that I always go back to is that 3 pillars of liberal theology. And there's this debate happening at the national UUA level right now. You may have heard of it, you may not have. We ended up spending way too much time about it at GA, where some folks are unhappy with the direction that the Unitarian Universalist Association is going. And the way that they express that unhappiness is by saying Unitarian Universalism is moving away from its historic roots as a liberal faith, which we still think is important. Friends, What is actually being said there at a national level is, we wish the UUA didn't talk about race so much, and we are fragile about it. But it's easier to use the language of theology to obscure the point, which is annoying. It's frustrating personally because it gives liberal theology a bad name, but also because it obscures a really important conversation going on about how we integrate these two big ideas. How we are going to speak about what is commonly held among us, not in Lincoln or in Omaha or in Kansas City, but as Unitarian Universalists. A conversation about what we owe each other, what we hold in common, where we are going as an association. That's a conversation that happens best out in the open, and I really wish it would stop getting sidetracked by this conversation about fragility that keeps coming up. A very, very small subset of our folks. One last piece. The Article 2 Commission is going to release its proposed text of the new principles and sources in January of 2023. If all goes well, there'll be an initial vote in June of 2023 at General Assembly in Pittsburgh. And I will be joyfully on sabbatical overseas from January to June of 2023. And while it does bother me a little bit that I won't be part of that conversation, that's okay, because the conversation actually doesn't belong to me or Bill Sinkford or clergy or theologians. It belongs to us as Unitarian Universalists. It belongs to all of you. We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote. That's talking about this congregation. What will you hold in common with the rest of the association? That's your work. So go and do it. And that's my work. So I will say amen and go sit back down.
Thank you, Reverend Oscar, and don't forget yet that note from your daughter. And we have another song.
Your hands lie open in the long, fresh grass. The finger points look through like rosy blooms. Your eyes smile peace. The pasture gleams and glows neath billowing skies that scatter and amass. All round a nest far as the eye can pass, a golden kingcup fields with silver edge, where the cow parsley skirts the hawthorn hedge. is visible silence, still as the hourglass. Deep in the sun-searched groves, the dragonfly hangs like a blue thread loosened from the sky. So this winged arm is dropped to us from above. Oh, clasp we to our hearts for deathless dark, this close companion inarticulate hour, when twofold silence was the sound. The song of love.
Thank you. That was really beautiful. All right, now we come to the point where we're going to be extinguishing our chalice. And I have a little prayer. Spirit of compassion, help us draw strength from all that we are. Give us new language with which to claim our wholeness, a new litany of joy built out of new meanings for old words. Journey with us as we strive to open our hearts wider until we hold everyone with compassion, including ourselves. Fill us with loving kindness. Amen, and may it be so. We actually have a couple of announcements, so just bear with me a little bit longer. So social hours in July are being hosted by a small group of young adults. And today we're having just an informal little potluck, and there's pastries down there. And hopefully Reverend Oscar can stay for a little bit. And if you want to go into a little bit deeper discussion about what he talked about. And after the month of July, they're looking for volunteers to help coordinate coffee hour, the MTC. So contact the MTC if you want more information. MTC is also looking for new leadership for the partner church team. I know this was in the e-blast, so you can get more information there. And also looking for more in-sanctuary techies for Sunday morning to help with the tech team. So they streamlined the process, so it's pretty easy now. So contact Steph Lewis if you're interested in helping with that. And then the volunteers are needed also for this urban heat island study that is going on. I think it's UNO or UNMC is kind of coordinating it. And so if you want to help, they're just analyzing heat islands in urban areas like Omaha with higher temperatures due to concrete buildings, roads, and other infrastructure. And they just are looking for people to drive around and take temperatures and staff little hubs where equipment is signed in and collected and returned, et cetera. So you can contact the Side with Love team to get more information on that. And Reverend Oscar has an announcement he would like to make.
This is more an invitation than an announcement. One of the things that I've said just about every time I'm in this building is it is great to build up connections in Nebraska Unitarian Universalism. So with that in mind, last summer at the Unitarian Church of Lincoln, we were trying to figure out how to respond to COVID, and we rented a band shell in Antelope Park in Lincoln and held a service outside on a Thursday night with a band, blankets. We tried to get a food truck. We're going to try again to get a food truck. We'll see if that happens. Anyway, it went really well last year. And so this year we decided to do it again. And then as we were talking, we ended up inviting the Kearney congregation to come join us. And then invited Second Omaha, because Juniper, their new minister, is going to come play some music with us. And now I'm here, and it occurs to me that we need to invite First Omaha as well. So consider this a personal invitation. Please come down. It's going to be Thursday night, August 18th at 7 o'clock at the Antelope Park Band Shell in Lincoln. It's in central Lincoln. It's a beautiful, beautiful space, and it'll be an opportunity to gather with Unitarian Universalists, hopefully from across the state and across multiple congregations. We'll get that information in writing to the office up here, but we'd love to see you there.
Be organizing carpools and everything, because I think that sounds good. So we have our closing hymn, Song of the Soul by Chris Williamson.
Chris Williamson was a lesbian feminist activist back in the 70s when it was really, really difficult to do that, and put herself in that space with her music. Open mine eyes that I may see glimpses of truth thou hast for me. Open mine eyes, Lord, and may Spirit divine, love of my life, I am crying, I am not dying, I am dancing, dancing alone in the madness. There is no sadness, only a song of the soul, and we'll sing this song. Why don't you sing along, and we can sing for long, long time. Why don't you sing this song? Why don't you sing along, and we can sing for a long, long time. What do